Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Korgoth of Barbaria from 2006. If there was ever a pilot that I always really wished had been a TV show, it would be Korgoth. I remember seeing this pilot and not understanding why you wouldn't pick it up. I just thought it was one of the great unmade possibilities that animation has had maybe this millennium. This was directed by Genndy. You can very much tell the animation in it is frankly amazing. It's crazy. It's like a heavy metal magazine fantasy comedy nightmare. This was so crazy and wild and had so many different infinite possibilities. It's kind of like the show of my dreams, especially like when I used to watch it constantly. I don't think I saw it in 2006. I saw it later, but I watched it a lot, particularly during my kind of stoner years, and definitely thought it was like one of the most amazing, violent, crazy, insane things I had seen. In some ways, it's different watching this post having the first season of Genndy's Primal, but I still think this is an amazing, awesome little pilot. Now, it only aired once on June 3rd, 2006 at 12:30 in the morning, or at night, or right after midnight, whatever you want to call it. And basically, Korgoth is a fairly typical, plot-wise, I guess, of a fantasy thing, where this group of people who works for this guy named Gogma Goog, who needs Korgoth to go with them to go to a wizard's castle because they believe the wizard to be dead, to get this treasure and give him all this money. And then he gives him a parasite, which the only way to get rid of the parasite is if he gives him the magic antidote in a very like Escape from New York type of setup. And then they go in on this journey, and he gives them like his strongest men and I think like a bunch of his weaker men just for fun, which I thought that was kind of funny. But that makes sense because they kill off a lot of these guys almost in the same way. I'm like, oh, should we do this? Oh, let me go check it out. And then dead. It happens like 3 times. Guy goes off from the group. Guys, this looks cool. Oh, I'm dead. My head's off. I'm a bloody mess and stuff. The violence in this is pretty ridiculous. It definitely makes you go, oh shit. My particular favorite is when this guy looks like he's about to attack Korgoth, who's considered this great, amazing barbarian, and he like rips off his ponytail and then rips all his skin off from like, and then pours like alcohol on his bloody insides. It was, whoa. And then you see these guys just screaming back and forth, just amazing. Apparently this is kind of a post-apocalyptic world after like Earth has fallen and society has fallen apart. It's not fantasy like in Primal where that takes place in prehistoric times. This actually takes place possibly in the future, and knowing our current society, probably in the future. And Korgoth lives there, and that's where Korgoth is. You don't really need that Future Boy Conan-esque intro, but it's kind of like look at all this crazy shit we're going to do. That's kind of Korgoth in a nutshell. But yeah, basically he goes to the wizard's castle and they try to steal his treasure and all the kind of crazy violent mayhem that ensues. I'm not going to give it all away. You should watch it. It's very available. This wasn't made because apparently it was too expensive. According to someone on Reddit who worked for Adult Swim from 2003 to 2007, which would put him around the time that this came out, that it was too expensive and it would have took a full third of the entire Adult Swim production budget, and they're making small risky bets and very few big ones. It says, too bad everyone liked Korgoth, which that's what I've heard. And anytime someone clicks on their website, they always say you couldn't have handled more than one, which is true, but then you made Primal, which is sort of similar but way more violent and crazier and isn't comedic. I think this was created by Aaron Springer, who would write for SpongeBob and is currently writing for SpongeBob, will work for Genndy on things like Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, and other projects, and Genndy obviously liked working with him. He would go on to do Periwinkle Around the World, pilot that Genndy also directed, and then Super-Duper Subterranean Summer for Disney XD. Aaron Springer has an illustrious history. He did not work on Primal, which you can definitely tell because it has a totally different vibe. I didn't see too many crew members who cross over, but to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than Genndy who worked on both. One thing I think, obviously I'm watching this post Primal. Maybe I should have done it before because this is a pilot I've watched way too many times, although it's been a bunch of years since I watched it again. And I think if I had watched it before Primal, this review would be different than after, because I think Primal is the much better show. Narratively, it's a lot stronger. It's trying to do a lot of things differently, but this is more of a comedic take than Primal was. Primal's not really that funny, to be honest with you. And it's not supposed to be funny. This is a lot funnier. This is a lot more on-purpose violence. That's more situational violence. This is more like, I'm going to surprise you with the craziness of animation can do. That's a theory in animation. It's a theory I quite like, and it makes animation a lot more free because of the possibility that absolutely anything can happen. And that's going on in Korgoth, 100%. And I love that about Korgoth. I love that it's doing that. I think it's amazing that it's doing that. It's one of the things that makes Korgoth so special is its way to do violence, but also directed by Genndy. Now, if this had been picked up, maybe part of it was like Genndy Tarkovsky ain't cheap because he's Genndy Tarkovsky, and like probably someone else would have to direct some of these episodes. And without him kind of at the forefront, would I have liked this as much? I don't know. Maybe they would have gotten someone just as good or better or do something different with it. I don't know. But the possibilities of this as a show, I don't know 100% what it would be. But I like how they kind of take this plot and have fun with it. You know, these guys going off, which they kind of admit they're sort of like the red shirts of Korgoth, and they're going to go off and get murdered and stuff. And they kind of have a lot of fun with that. Like, everything has like an interesting comedic take on it. So I think what Aaron Springer was doing with the show was pretty ingenious, because it's sort of like, you know, a recent show like The Mandalorian or something, and using that kind of structure, like those old kind of fantasy western samurai, insert whatever marauder kind of person in your culture that you use story, and, you know, kind of having a fun comedic spin on it, but not too much. Like, this isn't fully a comedy. It's still doing the text, but doing the text and having a funny result from it, which I think I really, really like about Korgoth. I mean, I could just watch him go on these adventures all day, and I've just watched him do this one. I don't love the gay panic stuff, which I hadn't seen this in a while, and it bothers me more as I get older. I don't know, depending on how woke you think I am or anything, but I've never really loved gay panic stuff. It's not that funny. One of the things, I guess, is a little gay panicky, but there's one part where someone makes two guys like make out with each other. I don't know if that's like necessarily gay panic or something, or like, I don't know. It's a little, that's definitely very creepy, because maybe those guys didn't want to, and regardless of gay panic or not, that's, you know, not okay to make someone do something with someone they don't want to do that with. That stuff I didn't really like, but other than that, I think this is pretty near perfect. It's probably the Adult Swim pilot I've always wanted something more to happen with, because the possibility so much was there, and I think I got like probably a much better show with Primal. Frankly, this has always been kind of a highlight for me of Genndy's whole career, what he did with it. And it's also because no one has fun with violence like this. Like, this is like, let's have fun with violence. Let's make violence funny. Let's go into that heavy metal magazine world of just like this violence kind of Frank Frazetta, Conan thing. I mean, this is like if Fire and Ice, the Ralph Bakshi film, was a comedy or something like that. I like Fire and Ice quite a lot, particularly from a design and violence standpoint. I think Korgoth has a lot of fun with stuff like that. It has a lot of fun with being in that world and like having a barbarian and everything you can do with it. It almost feels like kind of like, this is 2006. This feels like sort of like the almost like kind of Flapjack-ish kind of humor, where it's very weird, very esoteric. I think Adventure Time and SpongeBob are much better at doing that in a mainstream way, whereas Flapjack and this are like, let's just be esoteric and weird. I don't even give a shit if the audience wants to do it. We're kind of off in our own nonsense, and I sort of like being in this nonsense. In fact, I love being in this nonsense, and I think it's quite good. Korgoth has always been a great kind of animated, insane, violent show that I've always liked to put on now and then, and if someone hasn't seen it, I'm always like, oh, well, wait till you see Korgoth, and I get all excited because I know they're gonna sit back and watch this crazy fucking show. And I love this crazy fucking show. It's a great crazy fucking show, and it's the kind of crazy show that opens up to that kind of Fleischer Brothers possibility of animation idea that anything can happen, but it does it in kind of a very structured way, but in kind of a beautifully structured way. I wish Korgoth of Barbaria had gotten to go on much more adventures, but I'm just happy from what we got, and watching him go on this crazy adventure with, you know, sexy ladies and violence and all that stuff. A fun possibility of what could have happened, but when I watch it, I just enjoy what did happen. And I think Korgoth had an awesome journey. And this one adventure that Korgoth got to go on is still an awesome adventure that I always like to put on. Alright, so if you have seen Korgoth of Barbaria and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. Adult Swim does air this from now and then. I think they aired it into 2019. They've aired it several times since then, and it was even in the Adult Swim kind of box set thing. I don't know if anyone who has that box set, and apparently Korgoth got its own DVD or was on a DVD at some point, so it has been giving us very limited release actually, but that's honestly the most they've done with it. But they do continue to re-air it. I'm surprised they didn't re-air it around Primal, but they do still air it sometimes, and I wouldn't be surprised if they aired it again.